Hello and welcome to Liverpool News Daily. You may have noticed just then we've got a slightly new look, but it's the two of us back on again today. So I'm here with Ben Boxak. I'm here to talk through all the headlines of today. Obviously, it's been a big weekend, obviously for Liverpool and for the Premier League, really. Liverpool said goodbye to four players who've all made their mark on the club's kind of modern history. And obviously, Man City were presented with the title on Sunday afternoon as well. It's been quite an eventful weekend, hasn't it, Ben?
Yeah, obviously, yeah. I mean, probably more eventful for Liverpool. Like the Manchester City title celebration seemed pretty mute, and also just a bit forced. I mean, I know it's coming from a biased perspective, but it definitely felt like, even though Liverpool haven't had the greatest season, and probably not the greatest even game against Aston Villa, but it was a very nice reception for Roberto Firmino, obviously, for him to get that goal. And it was a great send-off as well at Anfield, and then outside Anfield at the Mural as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great for him to get that equaliser. Liverpool couldn't quite get over the line against Aston Villa, but it was a really tough game, really, wasn't it, Ben? And I think they more than matched Liverpool in a lot of areas. So I think it was probably a fair result on the day. But I think all eyes now are obviously turning to the future, and obviously the summer. It's a massive summer for Liverpool, quite a pivotal one, really. So one name that's came up a lot in recent months, obviously, is Mason Mount. And there's been a bit of a development, according to The Athletic, in the past week on that, or on his future, I should say. So basically, the latest update on his future is that Arsenal are determined to sign him alongside Declan Rice, as they seek to look for more creativity in midfield. So obviously, I think them two players have a history going back many years, don't they, Ben? So, there could be something in that if Declan Rice is looking to stay in London.
Yeah, I mean, they played at Chelsea's academy together, obviously known as childhood friends. But I think Arsenal, I would be surprised if they were to spend big money on both players. I mean, Declan Rice is being touted around as around the 80-90 million mark, even by West Ham. Obviously, Mason 70, probably 60 million for him. I mean, that's a lot of money to spend for Arsenal. But from Liverpool's perspective, in terms of Mount, I do not see the need for him necessarily if Alexis Mac Allister is already coming in, and it seems like that deal is edging ever closer and closer by the day.
Yeah.
And if Liverpool can get Mac Allister, then I don't necessarily see the need for Mount because they're very similar players. And I do think Liverpool could probably strengthen other midfield roles rather than getting two similar players who will then probably be competing for the same position as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think so. Bernard McKee on the comments here, he said Mason Mount is not worth 70 pence, which obviously is a little bit harsh. But do you think kind of Liverpool are looking for kind of riffing off that a little bit? Liverpool are looking for a little bit more value, would you say? And possibly Alexis Mac Allister kind of ticks more boxes, would you say, than Mason Mount potentially?
Yeah, I mean, look, Mount's got a good pedigree. He's done well before, but he hasn't had a great season. Mac Allister's obviously had a great season. He's won the World Cup with Argentina, and you want to be signing a player who is in the form of his life to sort of give you that extra push. With Mount, I just think it's going to be a bit more difficult for him to come into Liverpool, having already struggled. Liverpool have kind of also struggled this season, so I don't really see it being as much of a boost as Mac Allister's on fire. He's coming in, and I think he's going to sort of like get everybody's spirits up and he's got huge pedigree as well with having played really well in the World
Yeah.
Cup final,
Mm.
won the World Cup,
Mm.
did really well at that tournament.
Mm.
And I think he's been such a key player for Brighton as well. Scored 10 goals in the Premier League, got a few assists. Like he is just, I think, one of those players that you see, he's only 24, like he could go all the way and be Liverpool's midfielder, like that midfielder that will dominate Liverpool's midfield for the next potentially decades even.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with Mac Allister, like you say, he's a player on the up. Maybe Mason Mount to be coming here, not to rebuild his career so much, but just kind of get himself going again. Jim A in the comments here saying from targeting Bellingham to hoping for Mount. I kind of feel it's a little bit almost, they're going for Mac Allister over Mount, like you said just before. But yeah, that's another item on our list. Actually, there have been developments in the past week, of course, to do with Alexis Mac Allister, and the possible transfer to Liverpool. Apparently, the two clubs are currently discussing how to structure the fee at present. And one interesting detail is that there's a release clause in his contract, according to Football Insider, which is expected to become active at some point this summer. So what do you make of that, Ben?
Yes, it's this. I think, for how much money you can get him for, I think it's a good deal. As long as we're not talking about silly money, which I don't think that kind of figure is not necessarily silly money for Mac Allister, for someone who has done so well. So I think that sort of money also gives Liverpool the freedom and the space to buy players elsewhere. I mean, depending on what the budget is, which I think many people have reported, and I think it's going to be quite significant for Liverpool this summer. So it is going to be a considerable chunk out of that budget, but it's still going to leave Liverpool, I think, to invest in maybe a couple more midfielders, maybe a defender, and as Klopp said, they're targeting sort of all positions. So potentially even a forward with Firmino leaving. I think might be a bit of room for that as well.
Yeah, I do kind of get the feeling that, either Mount or Mac Allister, it would fit that kind of role, like you say. Which one is better, obviously, will divide the fan base a little bit. There's a comment there from D. Pierce, number one, basically saying that, Mount would make a big difference due to his style, due to his ability to press. But he does also go on to say that Mac Allister is class as well. So yeah, I do think it will be divisive within the fan base, but it is interesting to kind of consider, whether you sign one player in that mold and maybe looking at other areas, which I think Klopp kind of hinted at the weekend as well. So our final item on the list is to do with a player who's been out on loan this season, Sepp Berg. He's obviously been at Schalke in the Bundesliga. He was really unfortunate, wasn't he, early on in the season? He got quite a bad injury. So it's kind of, he had a long spell on the sidelines. It's kind of took him a little bit of time to get going again. I remember he scored about a month ago now, a really nice goal.
Yeah, last minute winner, wasn't it? It was like around the end of the game.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, apparently he's kind of been a little bit coy on his future. So he's kind of leaving any discussion over that until after the Under-21 European Championships. But he has admitted he will discuss his long-term plans when he returns to Merseyside. So kind of what do you see the future being for Sepp Berg? Obviously, he's a player who might be able to fill in that kind of Canate role, kind of, covering for Trent while he's further up the field, because obviously he can play in a right-back position. So maybe a bit of a hybrid role for him, in the centre-back kind of role that Canate's been playing at present. So kind of what do you see the future being for Van der Berg?
It's a difficult one because I think at his age, he probably needs first team minutes as much as he would be useful to have around the team. I don't see him staying around unless Liverpool sell maybe both Gomez and Matip. But then I'd still expect, if that is the case, then Liverpool will probably buy a defender as well. And then again, Berg becomes fourth choice, which I guess kind of works for Liverpool, because like you mentioned, he played almost an entire season as a right-sided fullback for Preston. He was regularly used there. He hasn't quite done it at Schalke, but he's someone who is impressively fast for a defender. I mean, which people don't tend to notice, but he recorded a top speed that was faster than Sadio Mane in the Bundesliga this season. And yeah, I know Mane has slowed down a little bit, but that's still really impressive for a centre-back, especially of his stature and of his height. He's good in the air, relatively comfortable on the ball. So there is a good prospect in him, and he's still only really young. I think he was born in 2001. So arrived at Liverpool as a 16-year-old, so it feels like he's been around forever. But at the same age, if you look at some of the top defenders in the world, they hadn't had that much experience as Van den Berg. So for me, I think it's probably too soon to let go of him on a permanent basis. I mean, depending on how much, if Liverpool are desperate for money and desperate for sales, then I could see it happening. But I think personally, I would like to keep him around. Depending on who goes, maybe keep him around the first team squad. But if the defense is kept relatively the same, then I'd send him out on loan again, maybe to the Bundesliga, just to let him have a full season there, or another European top 5 league.
Yeah, obviously he's still young, isn't he? And I think that, like you say, a lot of defenders kind of blossom, I'd say, kind of in the mid to late 20s. That was certainly the case with Virgil van Dijk famously as well. So yeah, I think there's still a long way to go for Van den Berg in his career. And yeah, a loan move might suit all parties, I reckon. But that pretty much brings us to a close for today, unless there's anything else you want to add, Ben.
That's about it for me. No?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks a lot for joining me, and I'm sure we'll see you at some point next week as well. Cheers. Bye-bye.